Let me put you on to a really good horror film. Now, if you like haunted house horror films, if you like films like The Others, you're going to love Presence, and you're in good hands because the filmmaker is none other than director Steven Soderbergh, and the screenwriter is David Cobb. Presence is from the perspective of the ghost. And so the way the story is told oftentimes feels like we, the audience, is the presence. Is so creative. Of course, it's been done before and done better, honestly, the others. But this is just a really good, mature way of horror filmmaking. So it stars Lucy Liu, Chris Sullivan from This Is Us, who he's my favorite character on that show, and they are a nuclear family who relocates really in the same town because they want to remain in the same school district because they have a star athlete in their son. He's a promising athlete, and so they want to make sure that he stays in the school district. But their daughter is troubled and has just recently lost two of her best friends to what has been understood as an overdose, but more sinister things had happened to them. And when they move in this house, things start happening that make them second guess if the house is haunted or if some presence is trying to communicate to them in this house. Now, have you seen this play out before? You have, but the perspective is from the ghost. And so it's really different than your traditional haunted horror house film. It has that sort of sensational, eerie feeling. It's not horror in the traditional scary jump scare type of horror. It is eerie and suspenseful. I have a stickler. I feel like the writing, David Cobb, a really good writer, Mission Impossible, he's a good writer. But I feel like he wrote the kids a lot more mature than I think they would be. Like, I guess kids, this generation is more mature. And so, oftentimes, because it wasn't the traditional tone of teenage kids, I feel like it was a lot more comical because what they were saying was more mature than they were, because these are high school students. But there's a reveal, not as big a reveal and a gotcha as the others, but there is a big reveal that makes you kind of question what you were watching. And there's some clues throughout embedded in the story that leads, I think, to the finale that answers some of the questions that you may have while the plot is unfolding. I really like the film. The acting, obviously, is good. Like, there's good acting. It's so believable. Oftentimes, because the ghost is handling the camera from the other side, because director Steven Soderbergh just gave this ghost his camera and yelled action and never yelled cut. There are some times where the camera is like a handy cam, like there's no steady cam used. It gets, there are these maneuvers that make you remember that there's actually a ghost perspective or the presence or entity's perspective telling the story. There's this really eerie scene where there's a medium who comes into this house. There are a couple of scenes. She kind of like stills the scene where I felt like it was fourth wall breaking because she's looking directly at the ghost, and it felt like she was looking through the ghost and to us. That's why I say that sometimes it feels like the audience is the entity in this house that's haunted. But I love it. I am so surprised that it didn't make more money, box office receipts this weekend, because it's really good. Like, should this be a streamer? Would this have done better maybe on one of the streaming platforms? 100%. But there's something about seeing horror films with an audience, especially with the suspense and eerie feeling in this dark, contained space, that gives it more of a horrific type vibe Watching it at home will be effective, I'm sure, but I think the effects are more prominent when you watch it with strangers in a dark room. I feel like that's where it was meant to be seen, at least initially. I recommend that you see it. I liked it. I love mature horror films like this because The Others is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Top three, maybe even number one. Like, I love that movie and it holds up. And I think this will hold up. Hopefully, it catches on because it is a good movie. At any rate, Presence is in theaters now.